it's Paul from Castifly. I'm glad you could join me today. Today we're going to talk about tapered leaders and tippet. What can we do to get you guys on the water quicker? And this is really a video for anyone out there that's new in fly fishing. You're trying to get started and you're trying not to be overwhelmed with everything that you need to learn. This is just a quick way to get going without a lot of thought into it. Just keep it simple, right? So we're going to focus first on what you need for trout fishing. And typically what I do is I use a number of different tapered leaders. I like Rio. I'm not sponsored by them at all. It's just a company that I really love their products, and they make good tapered leaders for sure, and float line. Love their stuff. And typically I'll have a 6X, a 5X, and a 4X, all different lengths. So what does 6X mean, Paul? Good question. So when you look at a tapered leader, most leaders today have a loop connection at one end, which you'll see right there. And the other end is the actual tapered tippet. And so up at the butt section, the diameter of the line is going to be a lot thicker and heavier than at your taper, at the tippet end. And that's where that number comes into play. So the larger the number, like a 6X or a 4X, the larger the number, the smaller the diameter. So when it comes to trout fishing, trout are very particular and they're very spookish. And so if they see a line in the water, they're going to take off. And so in most cases, I'm using 6X or 5X when I'm trout fishing most of the time. So when you tie on this tapered leader to your fly line, this is my reel here. Here's my fly line, my float line. And like I said, this is just a loop connection. And now you've got this leader on the front, which at the very end, you're going to tie your fly on now. What happens though is you start cutting back, and changing flies out all day. Pretty soon you're going to chew up that entire tapered leader. All the tippet anyway is going to be gone. So what do? Well, you can tie on some tippet, and that's what you'd want to do. But if you're a little overwhelmed with tying knots just starting out, that's the real purpose of these tapered leader packages like this, because you can simply take that off and throw it in your bag and put on a new tapered leader and go. You can do that. You can do that all day if you want. But it's going to get really costly really quick. Most of these, depending on where you purchase it and depending on what size it is, these can be anywhere from $5 to $12, depending on where you buy it. So they can get real costly real quick, which is where the tippet comes into play. You can repair your leader. The butt section's still good, but you've just cut back the taper or the tippet, and you need to add more tippet. Well, how do you do that? Well, you can simply tie like a double surgeon's knot. You just pull off a little bit off this spool, maybe a foot or two. Double surgeon's knot, boom, done. You've added some extra tippet, you're ready to go. Again, if you're overwhelmed with tying knots, Paul, I don't want to do that. I don't feel comfortable doing that on the water. I don't know what I'm doing yet. Okay, great. So on your to-do list, put down research on how to tie a double surgeon's knot. That's going to be a great way to tie some tippet material to your butt section of your leader. Another option though that can be really helpful if you're comfortable tying a clench knot, getting tippet material or adding tippet material to your leader could be as simple as these micro rings. Most fly shops, if you're around one, will have these types of rings. They're kind of a necessity if you really have a hard time tying knots. But also, even if you can tie knots, they're kind of nice actually. I don't know if you guys can see it. I've used these a lot in the past. It's so tiny. I've got it attached to my forceps there, which you definitely have to have those to tie these, to tie your leader on. So what you would do is basically take your leader and tie onto that ring with your leader and tie you a clench knot on there, and then move it around a little bit, and then tie on a new section to Tippet, maybe a foot or two. You didn't have to learn any new knots. You just tied on a clench knot and you're good to go. And the cool thing is, if you end up tearing up that Tippet, you can definitely just pull off some more, go back to that ring and add another section, and you're good to go. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about bass fishing. You know, for years I just used straight up mono off of one of those big spools you find at the bait and tackle shop. They cost you $5. It's 10 or 12 or 14 pound tests. It works perfectly fine. It's real easy to pull off a 8 or 10 foot, 12 foot section of monofilament and tie a loop connection on one end and kind of roll that up and put it in your bag for when you're bass fishing, and maybe build a couple of those. It's real simple and easy. But recently I came across, and I knew these existed, I just never tried them before, and I never have seen them around in many of the fly shops that I've been in. I picked these up a couple months ago, and these are Rio bass leaders. Man, I just never thought I'd buy a bass leader, but I did because I wanted to try them. These are really stiff nylon leaders. Man, I never think I'd use these, but I am I'm totally sold on them. So the first one is just a bass, 12-pound Rio bass leader, 9 foot. Works great. I think there's 3 of them in this pack. And then there's another one that they make, which I think I bought this one for the name, but I used it first. Ugh. This thing's awesome. It's called the Big Nasty. Again, I probably bought it for the name just because it's cool. But this thing, I love it. Man, it turns over flies so well. I just got used to it, and I really loved it. It felt good. Good action on it. Really liked it. Not necessary, but it's one of those luxuries that if you like something and you really enjoy using it and it makes you feel better about, you know, how you're fishing or how it feels when you're fishing, then go for it, man. It's your money, right? So the last thing I'll mention is when you pull these leaders out of the bag, man, they look like they could get really in a mess really quick, and you're right, they can if you don't pay attention. But these are basically just wound tight, and so you easily just unwind it, starting with the butt section, and just unwrap it around itself. And you can do that probably 5 or 6 times. You have to look at it. Pretty soon you'll see it just come apart. And if you need to go one more, you can. But then it'll come off just perfectly, just like this. Boom, 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 boom. And then no knots. It won't get tangled up or anything like that. When I was new to fly fishing, I remember getting some of my first tapered leader packages like this, and I just ripped open the package and thought it was just going to be pull it out and go, and then, man, I tangled them all up and I got into big knots. And yeah, so take your time, unravel them slowly, and then pull them out so you can actually use them. So anyway, that's it for this episode. I appreciate you guys checking in, and hope you're enjoying the videos, and I'll catch you on the next one, which is all about your safety.